The ground starts to tremble. It's a low, rhythmic shaking. You feel deep in your bones, long before you hear it. It isn't an earthquake. It's not thunder. It's the sound of footsteps. Each one lands with the weight of a city bus, shaking the very foundation of your world. Then comes the roar, a sound that rips through the air, a biological siren of absolute power that hasn't been heard on this planet for 66 million years. Imagine for a moment this wasn't a scene from a movie. Imagine the roar of a T-Rex was just another sound on your morning commute. That the shadow of a pterosaur passing overhead was as common as a jetliner. Our world, the one we know, is the result of a cosmic accident. A single 9-mile-wide rock hurtling through space that struck our planet and wiped the slate clean. That cataclysm ended the 165 million year reign of the dinosaurs, and in the silence that followed, allowed a new kind of life to crawl out from the shadows. It allowed for us. But what if that asteroid had been just a fraction of a degree off course? What if it had sailed harmlessly past, a silent ship in the cosmic night? What if the age of dinosaurs never ended? The answer isn't some theme park paradise. It's a world so fundamentally different from our own, we would hardly recognize it. A world where humanity's story might never have even begun. To understand the world that could have been, we first have to appreciate the world that was destroyed. 66 million years ago, Earth was a different planet.
It was generally warmer and more humid, with little to no ice at the poles. The continents were still drifting into place, and shallow seas cut across the land. And across this entire world, dinosaurs were the undisputed masters. Then, from deep space, came the Chicxulub impactor, a chunk of rock and ice the size of a mountain, traveling at unbelievable speed. Its impact, in what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, was an event of almost unimaginable violence. It unleashed the energy of 10 billion atomic bombs. It created a core of superheated plasma and sent out a shockwave that scoured the continent with winds over 1,000 kilometers per hour. Tsunamis hundreds of meters high smashed into coastlines for thousands of miles. But as devastating as the blast was, it was only the beginning. Thousands of gigatons of vaporized rock, dust, and sulfur were blasted into the atmosphere. This cloud of debris wrapped around the planet like a thick shroud, blocking out the sun. On land and in the sea, photosynthesis just stopped. The very base of the food chain collapsed. An endless winter fell upon the earth as temperatures plummeted. For years, maybe even a decade, the world was dark and cold. This was the Great Filter, an event so catastrophic it wiped out 75% of all species on Earth, including every single non-avian dinosaur. Now, let's rewind. Let's imagine that cosmic alignment was just a tiny bit different. The asteroid screams past our planet, maybe giving Earth a gentle, unnoticed tug as it continues on its journey. On the surface, nothing changes. The KPG extinction event simply doesn't happen. The long winter never comes. The fires don't burn. The dinosaurs, who had ruled for longer than we can really comprehend, just keep on going. Their reign continues, unbroken, and the world is set on a completely different evolutionary path.
In this alternate timeline, the Cenozoic era, our age of mammals, never really gets going. The Mesozoic just continues, and with it, the absolute dominance of the dinosaurs. They would have kept dictating the terms of life on every continent, shaping the very land itself. First things first, the megafauna we know today, elephants, rhinos, giraffes, lions, tigers, and bears, they just wouldn't exist. The jobs for giant plant eater and terrifying apex predator were already taken. Instead of herds of elephants crossing the savanna, you'd have vast herds of triceratops and other ceratopsians, their massive horns making it clear that no predator should mess with a healthy adult. The role of their giraffe, the high browser, that's filled by brachiosaurs and other sauropods, their impossibly long necks reaching into the canopies of towering trees. And the predators? They'd be on a scale we can barely imagine. The solitary terror of the Tyrannosaurus rex would still be the undisputed king of its territory, but the world would also be home to packs of dromaeosaurs, the infamous raptors. Their intelligence and cooperative hunting would make them some of the most efficient killers on the planet. The sheer pressure from these kinds of predators would be a constant driving force for every other living thing. Even the plants would be unrecognizable. The world of the late Cretaceous wasn't all lush grassy fields and dense flowering rainforests. Sure, flowering plants had started to show up, but the landscape was still dominated by huge forests of conifers, with an undergrowth of ferns and cycads. The rise of modern rainforests, with their thick, closed canopies, was a direct result of the dinosaurs dying. The giant herbivores, especially sauropods, were relentless ecosystem engineers. They weren't gentle giants. They moved through forests like living bulldozers, knocking down trees, clearing huge tracts of land, and keeping the landscape open and park-like. Without them, forests grew much, much denser, which changed everything for the plants and animals that lived there. One of the biggest changes would be to the evolution of fruit. Today, lots of plants rely on animals to eat their fruit and spread the seeds. In a world where dinosaurs stuck around, that whole process would have played out differently. Research on palm trees, for example, shows that back then, many species had huge fruits and were covered in defensive spines and thorns. After the dinosaurs vanished, these plants started losing their spikes and making smaller fruits to appeal to smaller animals.
Without the extinction, the sweet, fleshy fruits our own primate ancestors came to depend on might never have evolved, or at least not in the same way. The world would be a tougher, thornier, and far less bountiful place for a small mammal. For over 150 million years, while dinosaurs ruled the day, mammals did exist. They weren't the titans we see today, but they were a diverse and successful group in their own right, living in all the nooks and crannies the dinosaurs couldn't or wouldn't fill. They were creatures of the undergrowth, the burrowers, the climbers, the things that came out at night. Most were small, shrew-like or raccoon-sized, always cautious. The fossil record shows a surprising variety. Some could glide like flying squirrels, others were semi-aquatic like otters. They were survivors, perfectly adapted to a life lived in the shadows of giants. In a world where the asteroid never hit, that's pretty much where they would have stayed. The great mammalian radiation, that evolutionary explosion that saw mammals diversify into the huge array of forms we see today, was a direct result of the ecological vacuum the dinosaurs left behind. With the big guys gone, mammals could finally step out of the shadows and into the daylight. They could grow bigger, try new diets, and take over the empty jobs of large herbivores and carnivores. Without that opportunity, the pressure to stay small, fast, and hidden would have been relentless. The largest land mammal might have been no bigger than a badger. There would be no whales, no bats, no cats, no dogs, no cows, and no apes. The evolutionary paths that led to these familiar groups would be completely blocked by a wall of reptilian dominance. Mammals would have continued to thrive, but as a secondary class of animals, forever living at the mercy of their dinosaur overlords. And this has a huge, inescapable implication for our own story. The primate lineage, the one that includes monkeys, apes, and us, likely owes its very existence to the changes that followed the extinction. Early primates, like the tree-scrambling Purgatorius, were tiny omnivores that survived the impact. Their evolution was completely tied to the rise of flowering plants and the availability of fruits and insects in these new, dense forests.
In a world still ruled by dinosaurs, with its different plants and immense predatory pressure, it's incredibly unlikely that primates would have ever gotten their shot. The branch of the evolutionary tree that leads to Homo sapiens would have been snipped before it ever had a chance to grow.
So, if humanity was never in the cards, does that mean this alternate Earth would be a world without intelligent technological life? Well, not necessarily. The path to higher intelligence might have just been taken by a very different kind of creature. Meet the Troodontids. This was a family of small, bird-like dinosaurs from the late Cretaceous. One of them, Troodon, has fascinated paleontologists for one big reason: its brain. When you measure its brain relative to its body size, something called the encephalization quotient, or EQ, Troodon had one of the largest brains of any known dinosaur. Its EQ was comparable to modern birds like emus, and it was way smarter than most other dinosaurs of its time. On top of that, Troodon had a bunch of other promising traits. It had large, forward-facing eyes, giving it sharp, stereoscopic vision, perfect for judging distance. It had long arms and grasping fingers that could have been used to hold on to things. It was a fast, agile predator that likely hunted in packs, and that kind of social behavior often drives the evolution of complex communication. Back in 1982, paleontologist Dale Russell proposed a famous and controversial thought experiment. He wondered what would happen if a dinosaur like Troodon had survived the extinction. He imagined an evolutionary path towards even greater intelligence, eventually resulting in a dinosauroid, a hypothetical intelligent being with a big brain, an upright posture to free up its hands, and an intelligence that could one day rival our own. Of course, this is pure speculation. Many scientists today think a sapient dinosaur would probably keep a more bird-like body plan, using its snout and feet for manipulation, instead of evolving into a suspiciously human-like shape. And some recent studies suggest that even with their bigger brains, the structure of dinosaur brains might have made our kind of intelligence unlikely. Intelligence isn't an inevitable goal of evolution. It's a rare and complex thing that, on our planet, has only led to a global civilization once.
Still, the possibility is there. Over another 66 million years of evolution, what could these clever dinosaurs have become? Could they have developed complex language, advanced tool use, maybe even agriculture and cities? The planet might not have been devoid of civilization, but its architects would have been reptilian, not mammalian. Let's be clear. Based on everything we know about evolution, the single most likely outcome of the dinosaurs surviving is that we, Homo sapiens, would never exist. Our evolutionary story is a fragile chain of cause and effect, and the very first link in our chain was forged by that asteroid. No impact means the dinosaurs stay on top. Their dominance suppresses the evolution of large mammals. The ecosystems they create, with different plants and fewer high-energy fruits, remove the key pressures that led to primates. The road to humanity is blocked at every single turn. The world simply wouldn't have had room for us. But, just for the fun of it, let's dip into some science fiction. Let's ignore that overwhelming evolutionary probability and imagine that, by some impossible miracle, a species of intelligent, tool-using primates, humans, did manage to evolve in this dinosaur-dominated world. What would that life, that civilization, even look like? It would be a world built not on the idea of dominion, but on the principle of defense. It would be a world defined by fear.
If we shared a world with dinosaurs, our entire civilization would be a fortress,
The idea of suburbs and urban sprawl would be replaced by the necessity of urban citadels. Our cities would look completely different. Open plazas, ground-level glass storefronts, that's all architectural suicide. Instead, settlements would be built in naturally defensible spots. Cities might be carved into the faces of cliffs, accessible only by secure tunnels. Or maybe we'd build on high, inaccessible plateaus surrounded by colossal walls far thicker than anything in our history. The main threat isn't another army. It's a 40-ton Argentinosaurus that could accidentally demolish a city block just by wandering through. Infrastructure would be a monumental challenge. A highway on the ground would be a death trap, not just from predators, but from a herd of herbivores, causing a catastrophic pileup. Transportation between cities would have to be elevated or subterranean. You'd see high-speed armored monorails suspended far above the ground where passengers could look down on herds of hadrosaurs migrating below. Tunnel networks would be vast, providing a safe way to move people and goods without ever touching the surface. Agriculture, the foundation of civilization, would be a constant battle. A single herd of triceratops could wipe out a year's crops in a few hours. Farms would need to be as heavily fortified as cities, with deep moats, electrified fences, and constant surveillance. This might actually spur the early invention of hydroponics and massive indoor vertical farms, simply because farming out in the open would be way too risky. Technology would be completely reoriented around survival. Forget the space race, our best minds would be focused on dangers right here on Earth. Material science and engineering would be driven by the need for better walls, stronger fences, and more effective deterrents. We'd probably develop powerful sonic cannons and advanced repellents capable of turning away a charging carnivore without having to kill it. And our most important field of science? It would be paleobiology. But it wouldn't be about history, it would be about survival. We would study dinosaur behavior and migration patterns with the same intensity we study weather patterns. The Dino Watch would be a key part of every news report. A herd of Edmontosaurus is moving through the western plains. Expect delays on Highline 7. A juvenile T-Rex has been spotted near the Sector 4 perimeter. Residents are advised to remain indoors. Can you imagine what it would be like to be an ordinary person in this world? Your daily life would be defined by a mix of primal fear and absolute awe that we can only glimpse in nightmares. Your day might not start with chirping songbirds, but with the deep, booming calls of hadrosaurs echoing from a nearby valley. You'd turn on the news and, right next to the political headlines, you'd get the dinosaur migration report, vital information for your commute. You'd pack your kids' lunch for school where, along with math and history, they have mandatory evasion and identification drills. They know how to tell the difference between the footprint of a harmless herbivore and a dangerous predator. They know to freeze when they see a tyrannosaur and to run in a zigzag from a raptor. Your trip to work would be on an armored, elevated train. As you glide above the landscape, you might see a family of Stegosaurus grazing peacefully, its plates glinting in the sun. It would be a moment of breathtaking beauty, but one always tinged with the knowledge of the incredible danger they represent. The world outside your fortified city would be called the Zone or the Wilds, a place so dangerous most people would never dream of going there. Jobs like ranger, biologist, or transport guard would be some of the most dangerous and most respected in the world. Fear would be a constant low-level hum in society, but it would be matched by an equally powerful respect for nature. We would never have the illusion that we were masters of the planet. We would always know our place. We'd be the clever apes who built walls high enough to keep the monsters out. Our entire existence would feel like a victory, a hard-won stalemate with a planet that never truly belonged to us.
The dinosaurs wouldn't just change our physical world. They'd fundamentally alter our culture,
our stories, our very sense of self. Dinosaurs wouldn't be monsters from a forgotten past, resurrected for movies. They would be a living, breathing part of reality. Our oldest myths wouldn't be about dragons and giants. They'd be about dinosaurs. The T-Rex would be the ultimate god of death and destruction. Its fossilized teeth might be the first sacred relics. The giant, long-necked sauropods might be seen as earth gods, their deep calls the voice of the planet itself. Flying pterosaurs would be messengers from the heavens, or maybe sky demons that need to be appeased. Art would be filled with their images. Ancient cave paintings wouldn't show hunts of mammoths, but maybe a desperate raid to steal a triceratops egg. The grand statues in our cities wouldn't be of generals on horseback. They'd be of legendary heroes who defended the walls from a dinosaur attack. Fairy tales would warn children not about the wolf in the woods, but about the clever, sickle-clawed raptors that hunt in packs. Our relationship with nature would be one of deep humility. That whole idea we have of conquering the planet, it just wouldn't exist. We would know, in our bones, that we are not the pinnacle of creation. This might foster a deeper, more urgent environmentalism. We'd understand ecosystems not as resources to be exploited, but as complex, dangerous systems that have to be carefully managed for our own survival. How would we see the stars? Maybe we'd feel an even greater urge to escape, to find a world where we weren't constantly looking over our shoulder. Or maybe we'd feel a fiercer connection to our perilous home, a deep pride in our ability to carve out a life on a world of gods and monsters.
This vision of a dinosaur-filled world is just one possibility, woven from science and speculation. The variables are endless. What do you think would be the single biggest change to our daily lives? Would we find a way to thrive, or would we just be living in constant fear? Share your vision of this alternate reality in the comments below. And if you enjoy journeys into the world of what if, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss where our next thought experiment takes us. The story of our world is a story of absence, a quiet left behind after the earth-shattering roar of that ancient impact. It was that silence that allowed for a new sound to emerge, the timid footsteps of our mammalian ancestors, venturing into the daylight for the first time. Everything that we are, our art, our science, our cities, our dreams, all of it grew in the soil, fertilized by that catastrophe. Had that asteroid missed, the world wouldn't be a lesser place, just a different one. It would be a world of magnificent, terrible beauty, ruled by a dynasty that never fell. A world with a grand story of life on Earth continued down a reptilian path, a path that had no room for us. It's a humbling thought. Our existence, which feels so solid and certain, is really the outcome of a fragile, improbable chain of events. We are the children of chance. The silence of the dinosaurs was the necessary prelude to the first words of humanity. And that's a perspective that changes how you see the world forever.